On June 4, 2008, friends of Travis Alexander went to his house in Mesa, Arizona, after he missed an important conference call. That alone was enough to worry them. Travis was the kind of person who showed up. He was disciplined, ambitious, always moving, always planning the next thing. Missing something important without warning did not fit. Then they walked inside. In the bathroom, Travis was dead in the shower. He had been shot, stabbed over and over, and his throat had been cut so deeply that later descriptions of the wound shocked even people used to hearing about violent crime. Right away, one question hung over everything. Who had done something this personal, this close, and this brutal? To understand how the case got there, you have to go back 2 years, to 2006, when Travis Alexander met Jodi Arias at a conference in Las Vegas. The connection between them moved fast. Travis lived in Arizona. Jodi was in California. Distance usually cools things down. In this case, it seemed to do the opposite. There were late-night calls, emotional visits, and the kind of intensity that can feel exciting at first. On the surface, Travis looked like someone whose life was opening up. Friends remembered him as charismatic, polished, deeply involved in his faith, and driven in a way that stood out. He sold prepaid legal services, gave motivational talks, and came across as someone who believed hard work could keep pushing his life higher. Jodi entered that world with her own strong presence. She was confident, photogenic, flirtatious, and intense. At first, that intensity may have felt flattering, but over time, the relationship started to look less like a romance and more like a cycle nobody could cleanly end. People around them later described it as turbulent and off and on. There was attraction, but there was also suspicion, control, and insecurity. Travis reportedly told friends that Jodi could be possessive. Stories surfaced about tire slashing and unexplained appearances. Bit by bit, the sense grew that normal boundaries were starting to disappear. And still, the relationship kept dragging forward. That is part of what made this story so dangerous. It did not end with one dramatic breakup and clean separation. It broke apart and pulled back together, again and again. The kind of relationship where each new round can make both people think maybe this version will finally work. By the summer of 2008, Travis was preparing for a trip to Cancun with friends. People around him said he was trying to move on. He was looking ahead. Then June 4th arrived, and instead of hearing from Travis, his friends were standing inside his home, staring at a crime scene that felt anything but random. Investigators could see that almost immediately. There was blood throughout the bathroom. There were signs of a brutal struggle. This did not look like a distant, efficient killing. It looked furious. And then detectives found one of the strangest pieces of evidence in the entire case. Inside a washing machine in the house, they recovered a digital camera. It had been damaged, apparently in an attempt to destroy it. But the memory card still held images. Some of those photos showed Travis and Jodi together in intimate poses on the day he died. Then there were pictures of Travis alive in the shower. After that came accidental images that appeared to show a body on the bathroom floor and part of a person moving through the scene. It was an eerie sequence, almost like the crime had accidentally documented itself. That camera did more than provide evidence. It boxed the story in. By then, Jodi Arias had already told police she had not been in Mesa that day. She said she had not seen Travis for a long time. But those time-stamped photos placed her inside his home during the window when he was killed. Once that happened, her original version of events started falling apart. First, she denied involvement. Then she gave another story. She claimed 2 intruders had broken in and murdered Travis while sparing her. That version also collapsed. Eventually, Jodi admitted she had killed Travis, but said she did it in self-defense. One of the most striking parts of the case is not just that her story changed. It is the pattern of when it changed. Each new explanation came after the last one could no longer survive the facts. While that was happening, detectives and prosecutors were rebuilding the final stretch of the story. According to the case that emerged, Jodi had traveled from California to Arizona in a rental car. Once investigators started tracing the lead-up, small details began to look less random. There were questions about gasoline cans, questions about phone activity, questions about efforts to reduce digital traces. Piece by piece, the picture prosecutors built was that this was not a sudden attack by strangers, and not a split-second act of survival. Their theory was blunt. Jodi Arias killed Travis Alexander in a personal, deliberate act driven by obsession and anger. What made the case grip people so hard was that Travis and Jodi were not strangers linked by one terrible event. They had history. They had intimacy. They had private resentments and private humiliations. The killing looked like the final eruption of something that had been burning for a long time. That emotional history became impossible to separate from the evidence. When the case reached trial, it exploded into a national spectacle, and it was not hard to see why. The facts were extreme, but there was something else too. Jodi's public presence made the case even more unsettling for many people. She often appeared calm, composed, and intensely aware of how she came across. She gave interviews. She spoke carefully. At times, she seemed almost more like someone managing attention than someone caught in the gravity of what had happened. In court, prosecutors laid out the digital evidence, the witness testimony, the physical evidence from the scene, and the trail of shifting explanations. The defense leaned on a very different claim. Jodi said Travis had been abusive and that she acted to save herself. That meant jurors had to sit with two very different versions of the same killing. But the physical evidence did not change to match the changing stories. Jurors heard about the camera in the washing machine. They heard about the blood evidence. They heard about the timing. They heard about the severity of Travis's wounds. And even in a relationship filled with conflict, the violence itself stood there as a fact that was hard to explain away. This was not a single gunshot fired in panic. Travis was overwhelmed in an attack that looked sustained and deeply personal. That is one reason the case stayed in headlines for so long. It forced people to confront something uncomfortable. Jodi Arias did not fit the simple mental picture many people have of a killer. She did not look like a monster from a movie. She did not sound wild or visibly out of control. In a strange way, the calmness many people saw in her public appearances made the case feel even colder. People kept coming back to the same question. How can someone appear so controlled after a killing this violent? By 2013, the trial reached one major answer. Jodi Arias was convicted of first-degree murder. But even then, the legal story was not over. The sentencing phase stretched through additional proceedings, and it was not until 2015 that she was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of release. By that point, the case had already secured its place as one of the most watched murder trials in modern true crime. Not because the ending was mysterious. In some ways, it was the opposite. The facts that held the case together were brutally concrete. A dead man in his own home, a damaged camera, time-stamped photos, a trail of changing stories, a relationship that had gone from intense to unstable and then to catastrophic. And underneath all the media attention, all the courtroom analysis, and all the replayed testimony, that was the part that never changed. Travis Alexander was alive in his own bathroom with someone he knew, someone he had once been involved with, someone close enough to be trusted inside the house. Then he was gone. That may be the coldest part of the whole story. The danger was not outside the door. It was already inside. Years later, people still talk about the Jodi Arias case for a few reasons. Yes, the trial was dramatic. Yes, the evidence was unforgettable. But more than that, the story sits in a place that unnerves people. It is about obsession wearing the shape of love. It is about lies changing form under pressure. And it is about how a private relationship can turn public only after everything has broken apart. For all the noise that came later, the center of the case stayed painfully simple. A man was killed in his home by a former girlfriend who kept changing her explanation as the evidence closed in. And in the end, the truth did come through, not cleanly, not quickly, but it came through in photographs, in blood, in timelines, and in a story that kept narrowing until there was nowhere left for it to go. That is why this case still lingers, not just for the brutality of what happened to Travis Alexander, but for the way the facts kept cutting through every new version of the story until only one outcome remained. As always, visit us at readtherealstory.com for more unbelievable true stories. Until next time, stay curious.